The stars over Zithra burned like scattered gems in the dark sky, each one reflecting in the crystalline towers of the royal palace. Princess Vela stood on her balcony, her long, silver hair catching the light of 3 moons. She smiled, not out of kindness, but with the sharp amusement of one who has never been proven wrong. For centuries, her people had believed in their perfection: biological, intellectual, social. Fertility was not a mystery here. It was a precise art, measured, controlled, and celebrated year-round. Humans, by contrast, were unpredictable. Vela had heard the stories, seen the data from the distant blue planet called Earth. A species so fragile, so chaotic, that even their own reproductive cycles seemed random. She found it fascinating and hilarious. "I dare them to prove it," she whispered to herself. "I dare them to show me they can reproduce outside the constraints of nature." Within hours, her challenge was broadcast across the palace holoviewers, sent to the fleets and diplomatic stations that monitored interstellar communications. The message was simple but sharp. Humans claim to reproduce year-round. Let them prove it. Let them face Zithra's scrutiny. Earth received the broadcast in stunned silence. Among the human delegates sent to Zithra, there was shock, disbelief, and most surprisingly, a spark of determination. Dr. Mara Havel, a lead biologist and the appointed head of the delegation, leaned back in her chair aboard the starship Resolute. Her team of scientists and diplomats looked around, a mix of worry and curiosity etched across their faces. "This is insane," muttered Lieutenant Kieran O'Neill, a military advisor and one of the few volunteers who had come to represent humans in such a delicate contest. "They think we can't, that we're incapable." Mara shook her head, though her lips curved into the smallest of smiles. "That's exactly why we'll do it. They don't understand humans yet. They've never faced our ingenuity." The starship landed in the palace's immense courtyard, a space vast enough to hold thousands of Zitharan spectators. Crystal spires reached into the sky, their surfaces reflecting light in every color imaginable. Alien attendants approached the humans, their forms fluid, shimmering, and elegant. They spoke in melodic tones, translated instantly by the ship systems. "Welcome to Zithra," one of them said, bowing. "The princess has challenged your species. You will demonstrate your capability under our observation. You will follow our rules. Deviation will not be tolerated." Mara met the attendant's gaze steadily. "We understand, and we accept." The humans were led to a chamber unlike anything they had ever seen. It was circular, with floors that glimmered like liquid crystal. The walls displayed real-time projections of planetary cycles, temperature variations, and environmental controls. Zitharan fertility experts hovered around the edges, observing every move. Princess Vela herself appeared, stepping forward on a platform that rose smoothly from the ground. She was taller than most humans would expect, her presence commanding and immediate. Her eyes, silver like polished metal, scanned the humans as though she could see into their very DNA. "You are a brave species," she said. Her voice, though soft, carried through the chamber. "Or perhaps foolish. You claim your species can reproduce without restriction. Here we see if that is true." She gestured toward the team of scientists and volunteers. "Show me, prove it, or admit the limits of your kind." The room fell silent. Mara's heart raced, not from fear but from anticipation. This was more than a test, it was an opportunity. If humans could demonstrate adaptability under conditions alien to their biology, they could earn respect across a galaxy that had always underestimated them. The first task was straightforward, in theory. The humans had to demonstrate viable reproductive capability under Zitharan environmental cycles, which were synchronized with the planet's triple moons. Humans were seasonal by comparison, and many of the Zitharans clearly doubted that they could adapt. Mara turned to her team. "We have limited time. We need to replicate Earth's conditions artificially. Light, temperature, diet, everything matters." her assistant doctor. Lin Wei nodded, already running calculations on a hovering console. We can simulate a 24-hour Earth cycle within these pods, she said, pointing to a series of translucent chambers along the perimeter. Temperature, humidity, and circadian rhythms can be controlled precisely. But we'll need to accelerate cycles without stressing the volunteers. Lieutenant Kieran O'Neill raised an eyebrow. So, we're expected to basically trick biology into cooperating. Exactly, Mara said. It's a test of adaptability, ingenuity. Humans survive because we find ways to bend rules. Vela's eyes flicked toward Mara as if sensing her thoughts. You speak well. Let us see if your species acts as cleverly as it talks. As the humans prepared their equipment, the Zitherans began to introduce challenges. They altered atmospheric pressure subtly, changed the light wavelengths, and even introduced minor gravitational variations, all designed to test resilience and adaptability. Each adjustment was a puzzle. Each puzzle required rapid problem-solving. Mara watched her team work tirelessly, adjusting simulations, recalibrating chambers, and monitoring volunteers. Sweat formed on brows and hands shook slightly from fatigue, but the humans pressed on. This was more than science. It was a test of spirit. Hours passed, and small successes began to emerge. A chamber's microclimate perfectly mimicked a summer day on Earth. Volunteers showed normal biological responses, confirming that human bodies could adapt to alien cycles, at least temporarily. Vela observed silently, her expression unreadable though there was a faint crease in her brow. I see promise, she finally said, her voice calm but laced with curiosity. Your species may have resilience, but this is only the beginning. Zithera will not be impressed by small tricks. We demand proof of full functionality. The humans understood what she meant. This was no longer just about survival or adaptation. They had to produce undeniable evidence, a living demonstration that humans could overcome their biological limits in an alien environment. Mara gathered her team in a corner of the chamber. Listen carefully, she said. We have a chance to show what humans can really do. Not by brute force, but by creativity, determination, and planning. Every adjustment we make, every simulation we perfect, brings us closer to proving ourselves. Zithera thinks we are fragile. We will show them otherwise. The team nodded, determination replacing fear. Each scientist and volunteer knew the stakes. Failure would humiliate humanity in front of a species that prided itself on perfection. Success, however, would earn not just respect, but a place in history. By the end of the first day, they had completed several cycles of simulations. Zitheran observers whispered among themselves, some clearly impressed, others skeptical. Vela remained above the fray, her silver eyes watching, judging, calculating. The humans had survived the first challenge. They had adapted. They had endured ridicule, alien skepticism, and environmental variables no Earth-based species had ever faced. But Mara knew this was only the start. The real trial would come when they had to demonstrate full reproductive viability, without cheating nature, without shortcuts, under the watchful eyes of a species that considered humans biologically inferior. As night fell on Zithera, its 3 moons casting strange patterns across the crystalline towers, Mara stood on a balcony overlooking the courtyard. Kieran joined her silently. You really think we can do it? He asked. Mara looked out at the moons, then back at the palace. We don't just think we can, we will. Humans survive because we refuse to be limited. That's who we are. A cool breeze whispered across the balcony, carrying with it the strange scent of alien flora. Somewhere in the palace, Vela watched from shadows, a small smile playing on her lips. She did not yet fully understand humans, but she was about to. Below, the human volunteers prepared for another cycle, unaware of how much attention they were attracting. In every movement, in every adjustment, they demonstrated adaptability, resilience, and creativity. the very traits that had allowed humanity to survive against impossible odds for millennia. And far above, the stars continued to shine, indifferent to species or challenge. Yet on this small palace, under alien scrutiny, humanity was about to prove that they were more than fragile. They were unstoppable the next morning. The palace chambers gleamed with a strange light. Sunlight from Zithara's twin suns shimmered across the crystalline walls, casting rainbows that danced over the human team's equipment. Dr. Mara Havel walked among the pods, checking temperatures, airflow, and simulated Earth cycles. The volunteers moved with purpose, each step measured, each action deliberate. Today, the stakes were higher, and the humans felt it in their bones. Princess Vela appeared once again, stepping lightly onto the platform that hovered above the chamber. Her silver hair trailed like a comet, catching the light in blinding flashes. She did not speak at first. Her gaze swept over the humans, and for a moment, silence ruled the room. "You have survived Zithara's first test," she said finally, her voice soft but sharp. Yet surviving is not the same as proving capability. Adaptation is easy. Innovation is hard. The next stage will determine if your species deserves to be called resilient. Mara nodded, feeling a surge of determination. "We are ready," she said, keeping her tone steady. The challenge had changed. Zitharan scientists introduced new variables into the environment: shifts in gravity, fluctuating atmospheric pressure, and irregular light cycles that no Earth-born species had ever experienced. Each pod became a miniature world of chaos. Dr. Lin Wei adjusted a control panel, her fingers moving quickly across holographic screens. "We can stabilize the core conditions," she said. "But any sudden change could disrupt our volunteers' cycles. We need precise timing." Lieutenant Kieran O'Neill leaned against the wall, his jaw tight. "So we're supposed to survive chaos and still function biologically. That's intense." "Not just survive," Mara replied. "We have to thrive." The volunteers were now placed inside individual chambers that mimicked Earth seasons, but with Zitharan interference layered on top. Summer heat waves, winter chills, sudden storms of artificial wind, they all tested the human body and mind. The Zitharans observed silently, their faces unreadable. They seemed to expect failure. Hours passed. Some volunteers experienced fatigue, dizziness, or disorientation, but the humans adapted quickly. Mara's team used rapid adjustments. Light wavelengths were changed to mimic sunrise and sunset. Subtle vibrations simulated Earth's gravitational pull. Air composition was adjusted to simulate oxygen levels. The volunteers began to stabilize, showing normal biological responses. Princess Vela watched, her expression unreadable. "Impressive," she said finally. "But this is not enough. You are clever at maintaining balance, but the true test is flexibility under pressure. Can your species perform under complete unpredictability?" Mara's heart raced. "We will," she thought. Her team had anticipated this challenge. They had built algorithms to predict responses and make real-time adjustments. They had trained the volunteers mentally to endure disorientation and physiological stress. Humans were not perfect. They never claimed to be, but they could improvise faster than any machine. The first live test began. Volunteers were exposed to sudden changes in temperature and light while maintaining simulated Earth cycles. One chamber cooled to near freezing, then suddenly warmed to summer heat. Another experienced rapid shifts in air pressure. Sensors measured vital signs, and Zitharan scientists took notes with clinical precision. Kieran watched a volunteer, a young woman named Alina, who shivered violently as the chamber cooled. "She won't make it," he whispered, doubt creeping in. Mara shook her head. "Watch." Alina closed her eyes, took deep breaths, and began to adjust. Her body responded to the sudden change, maintaining internal balance while her mind stayed calm. The sensors confirmed her biological stability. The Zitherans murmured among themselves. This was unexpected. Their species rarely tolerated such variability, and yet here were humans managing chaos with precision. Vela's silver eyes flicked to Mara. There was a trace of curiosity, perhaps even respect, though she would not admit it aloud. Next, the humans had to demonstrate actual reproductive capability in these unpredictable conditions. Zitharan observers introduced environmental factors designed to disrupt cycles, artificial storms, gravity fluctuations, and sudden radiation pulses mimicking solar activity. The humans had to respond not with panic but with adaptation. Mara coordinated from the control room. "Adjust the pods incrementally," she instructed Lin Wei. "We cannot overstress the volunteers, but we must simulate extreme variability. Watch their vitals carefully." Each adjustment was a test of creativity. The humans built miniature feedback systems inside the pods, using sensors to anticipate environmental changes. They programmed subtle changes in light, temperature, and air composition to guide biological responses without violating natural limits. Meanwhile, the Zitherans introduced social pressure. Volunteers were observed not only for biological performance but for stress management and cooperation. Humans were encouraged to communicate, share observations, and support each other in adapting to the alien environment. During one shift, a sudden gravity fluctuation caused a chamber to tilt sharply. Volunteer Daniel stumbled but managed to steady himself using the chamber's handrails. Mara's heart leaped. If he had fallen, the experiment could have failed. But instead, he adapted quickly, adjusting his body to the new orientation. Sensors confirmed continued biological stability. "Remarkable," whispered one Zitharan scientist, her tone tinged with surprise. Vela, standing silently on her platform, tilted her head. "This is unexpected," she admitted softly, though her words carried more curiosity than praise. By midday, the humans had stabilized multiple volunteers under extreme conditions. Small victories gave way to larger breakthroughs. The team discovered that subtle environmental cues, simulated earth sounds, controlled light cycles, and gentle temperature shifts helped maintain biological balance even under Zitharan interference. Mara allowed herself a small smile. The humans were proving something important, that adaptability, intelligence, and teamwork could overcome physical limits. It was not brute strength that made them formidable, but the ability to improvise, observe, and adjust in real time. The most critical test came when the team attempted a simulated reproductive cycle under Zitharan conditions. The volunteers' bodies responded to the artificial environments, showing normal hormonal patterns and biological readiness. Zitharan monitors recorded every metric. Vela's eyes narrowed. "You claim humans can reproduce year-round," she said, her voice measured. "So far you have shown resilience. You have adapted. But can your species actually function fully under these conditions?" Mara nodded, stepping forward. "We are ready to demonstrate, not through words but through evidence." The Zitharans watched as the human volunteers moved through carefully controlled cycles. The team's systems ensured that environmental stressors were mitigated without altering natural biological responses. Slowly, the results began to show promise. Hormonal activity consistent with reproductive readiness, successful cellular processes, and signs of adaptability under extreme variability. Vela's expression shifted. Her amusement had faded, replaced by a trace of intrigue. Humans were proving her assumptions wrong, not with brute force, but with creativity, ingenuity, and emotional resilience. By late afternoon, the humans had completed the second major cycle of trials. Exhausted but exhilarated, they emerged from the pods. Their movements were tired but steady. Every volunteer had maintained stability under impossible conditions. Mara gathered the team. "Today, we have shown that humans are more than resilient," she said, her voice calm but firm. "We are adaptable. We can function where others might fail. This is the edge of our species, our creativity, our intelligence, our determination. Zithra will remember this." Vela watched silently. For the first time, her usual composure wavered slightly. She had expected human frailty, chaos, and failure. Instead, she had witnessed a species capable of thriving under conditions no one thought possible. As night fell on Zithra, the palace towers glimmered under the light of the three moons. Mara stood on a balcony looking down at the courtyard. The humans had survived the day's trials, and for the first time she felt that the impossible might be within reach. Kieran joined her silently. "Do you think she's impressed?" he asked, his tone cautious. Mara shook her head slowly. "She's curious," she said. "Curiosity is a start. Tomorrow we will go further. We will push the limits of what humans can do, and when we succeed, no one on Zithra will ever doubt us again." Below, volunteers prepared for the next cycle, their faces a mix of fatigue and quiet determination. Each step, each adjustment, was a testament to human ingenuity. Even under alien scrutiny, they were proving that their species was more than fragile. They were capable of thriving against impossible odds. And somewhere high above, Princess Vela watched from her platform, silver eyes reflecting both challenge and curiosity. She did not yet fully understand humans, but she was beginning to. And that understanding would come at a price, the price of proving her assumptions wrong. The next day, the palace chambers were alive with anticipation. Princess Vela had summoned the human team to the central observation hall, a circular room that floated above the courtyard, its floor a smooth crystal that reflected light in every color. Zithran scientists and nobles lined the edges, their faces cold masks of curiosity. They had watched the humans adapt, survive, and even thrive under unpredictable conditions. Now, the next stage demanded proof of true reproductive capability under alien constraints. Dr. Mara Havel felt the weight of the moment settle on her shoulders. This was the stage where theory met reality. The humans had proven resilience and adaptability, but demonstrating full reproductive functionality under Zitharan interference would test the limits of human ingenuity. "Today," she said to her team, "we show them what humans are really capable of. Not with luck, not with chance, but with intelligence, coordination, and determination. Zithra believes we are fragile. It is time to prove them wrong." Lieutenant Kieran O'Neill rubbed his temples. "You really think we can do this? One mistake and the entire species looks weak." Mara smiled faintly. "One mistake is not an option, but one innovation can change everything." The humans were led into specialized pods, larger than before, capable of simulating Earth environments in full detail. Artificial sunlight, temperature, gravity, and atmospheric conditions could be manipulated, but the Zitharans constantly introduced variables to test the limits of adaptability. The chambers were designed to observe, not assist. The first challenge was subtle but crucial: maintaining stable biological processes under rapid environmental shifts. Zitharan scientists adjusted gravity in cycles, causing internal fluids to move unpredictably and creating sensations no human had experienced before. Mara monitored the data, her eyes scanning screens for any sign of instability. In one chamber, volunteer Alina closed her eyes, breathing steadily despite the swirling forces around her. Sensors confirmed stable heart rate, balanced hormonal activity, and no signs of physiological stress beyond minor adaptation markers. The Zitharans watched silently, and Mara caught a flicker of surprise in one of their eyes. Small victories built momentum. Each volunteer learned to anticipate shifts, adapting not just physically but mentally. The humans communicated through gestures, visual signals, and even subtle body movements to maintain coordination, a skill no Zitharan had expected. Princess Vela observed from above, silver eyes narrowed. "Interesting," she murmured. "They do not falter, they adjust, they cooperate." By mid-morning, the humans reached the most critical stage, simulating a reproductive cycle under Zitharan conditions. Hormonal activity, cellular responses, and reproductive readiness were all monitored in real time. The humans had prepared for this with meticulous precision. Artificial diets mimicked Earth nutrients, light cycles replicated circadian rhythms, and controlled environments minimized stress. Dr. Lin Wei adjusted a panel. "We are ready," she said. "All systems stable. Volunteers are physiologically prepared. The Zitharan interference is within tolerable limits." Mara nodded. "Begin the cycle." As the systems activated, the humans responded naturally, their bodies adjusting to simulated Earth conditions while compensating for Zitharan disruptions. Sensors recorded vital data, hormonal spikes, cellular replication, and signs of biological synchronization. Each indicator confirmed what Mara had hoped: the human body could function effectively, even in a challenging alien environment. Vela's silver eyes flicked over the data, her expression unreadable. She had expected failure, but the results contradicted every assumption she had made. Humans were not fragile. They were capable, resourceful, and adaptable beyond what Zitharan science had predicted. Suddenly, a series of unexpected environmental changes was introduced. Light wavelengths shifted rapidly, gravity fluctuated unpredictably, and atmospheric composition altered. This was designed to push the humans to the absolute edge. Many species would fail under such conditions, their reproductive processes halting entirely. But the humans adapted. Volunteers communicated silently, adjusting posture, breathing, and even dietary timing to maintain stability. Mara's team modified pod conditions in real time, fine-tuning light, temperature, and pressure without interfering with natural processes. Every adjustment was calculated, precise, and cooperative. One volunteer, Daniel, felt a sudden pressure change and stumbled, but Alina reached out, steadying him. Their teamwork allowed the cycle to continue uninterrupted. Zitharan monitors exchanged murmurs, clearly impressed despite themselves. Vela's voice cut through the murmurs. "You claim humans can reproduce year-round. I now see that you endure challenges, but endurance is not proof. Show me the outcome. Show me that your species can function fully under any condition." Mara's heart raced. This was the moment of truth. They had proven adaptation, resilience, and biological stability. Now, it was time for tangible evidence. Using the pods, integrated systems, the humans generated the first tangible results: markers of viable reproductive readiness, synchronized cycles, and cellular stability. Sensors confirmed successful adaptation at a level that Zitharan science had believed impossible. The observers gasped. Even Vela's usual composure faltered slightly. She had expected failure, humiliation, or at least struggle. Instead, she witnessed a species that not only survived extreme conditions but thrived in them. Mara allowed herself a small smile. The humans were proving something far more important than biology. They were demonstrating ingenuity, determination, and cooperative problem-solving, traits Zithra had always assumed were inferior in humans. The next challenge introduced an even greater variable: social and emotional stress. Zitharans believed that human emotions would destabilize biological processes, that cooperation under stress would fail. To test this, volunteers were placed in slightly isolated chambers, unable to see or hear each other, while environmental pressures increased unpredictably. At first, the isolation caused minor stress responses, increased heart rates, brief hormonal spikes, and tension. But the humans adapted again. They relied on training, visualization, and internal communication strategies developed by Mara's team. Emotional resilience complemented biological stability. Princess Vela watched closely. Her silver eyes studied every movement, every reaction. "This is remarkable," she whispered. "They endure not just the physical but the emotional. They adapt fully. How is this possible?" Mara understood the question without words. Humans thrived because they were not limited by instinct alone. They used intelligence, creativity, and social cohesion to overcome environmental and emotional challenges. They did not wait for conditions to be perfect. They made conditions work for them. By late afternoon, the humans had stabilized all volunteers under extreme biological, environmental, and emotional stress. Every metric confirmed the results. The human species could function fully, even under conditions designed to halt natural processes. Vela's expression softened, though she would not admit admiration aloud. Her challenge had been answered, not with luck, not with shortcuts, but with ingenuity and perseverance. Humans were more capable than she had believed. Mara gathered her team. "Today, we have done more than survive," she said. "We have proven that humans are adaptable, intelligent, and capable under any circumstance. Zithra may not fully understand us yet, but they cannot deny our abilities. This is the edge of humanity, our creativity, determination, and resilience. That is what makes us powerful." As night fell over Zithra, the palace towers glimmered beneath the 3 moons. Mara stood on a balcony, looking down at the courtyard where the humans had emerged victorious, exhausted but triumphant. Their faces were tired, but their eyes reflected quiet pride. Kieran joined her silently. "Do you think we've finally earned her respect?" he asked. Mara shook her head slowly. "She's curious now. That is enough for today. Tomorrow, we take the final step. We will show Zithra not just what humans can survive, but what they can achieve." Below, volunteers prepared for the next cycle, each movement careful, deliberate, and full of quiet determination. Humans had proven their adaptability, their resilience, and their ingenuity. Now, they would prove their creativity and mastery, the final step in earning respect from a species that had once dismissed them as fragile. And high above, Princess Vela watched from her platform, silver eyes reflecting a mix of curiosity, caution, and a faint trace of admiration. She had expected to see failure. Instead, she had seen a species that adapted, endured, and thrived where no other could. The question now was no longer if humans were capable, but how far they could go. The final day rose slowly over Zithra, and the palace seemed quieter than before. Word had spread across the planet. The human challenge had reached its last stage. Nobles, scientists, and even military leaders gathered inside the great crystal hall. Floating platforms circled the chamber in layers, each filled with observers. At the very center stood the largest environmental pod ever constructed in the palace. Princess Vela did not stand above the hall this time. She stood at ground level. That alone made the Zitherans whisper. Dr. Mara Havel noticed it immediately. The princess was no longer watching from a distance. She wanted to see this up close. "Today," Vela said, her silver eyes scanning the room, "we conclude this challenge. Humans claim they can reproduce at any time of their planetary cycle. They claim flexibility beyond biological restriction. We have tested their endurance. We have tested their adaptation. Now we test their proof." Her gaze shifted to Mara. "You may begin." Mara felt the weight of every eye in the hall. This was not only about biology anymore. It was about reputation, about humanity's place in the galaxy. For centuries, humans had been viewed as emotional, chaotic, unpredictable. Today they would show that unpredictability was strength. She turned to her team. "All systems ready," Dr. Linway nodded. "Environmental stabilization active, nutrient balance confirmed. Circadian simulations aligned with Earth baseline. Zitharan interference parameters loaded." Lieutenant Kieran O'Neill stood near the main console, calmer than he had been all week. "Volunteers are prepared." Inside the massive central pod, Two volunteers stood calmly, surrounded by a carefully controlled Earth-like environment. Soft light mimicked a summer afternoon. Air composition matched Earth's atmosphere precisely. Temperature was balanced. The pod was not simply a chamber, it was a miniature Earth ecosystem. But outside that pod, Zitharan systems waited to interfere. Vela raised one elegant hand. Introduce environmental variability. Immediately, the outer systems activated. Gravity fluctuated by small degrees. Atmospheric pressure shifted in waves. Light spectrum changed subtly, moving from earth yellow to Zithara's pale silver glow and back again. Inside the pod, the humans felt it. One of the volunteers closed his eyes and focused on breathing. The other steadied herself and adjusted posture just as they had practiced. They were not fighting the changes. They were flowing with them. Mara monitored every signal. Hormone levels remained stable. Heart rates elevated slightly but normalized quickly. Neural activity showed focus, not panic. Zitharan scientists began whispering. They are compensating in real time. Biological systems remain active. Stress response is minimal. Vela stepped closer to the pod. Increase unpredictability, she ordered. The shifts became sharper now. Temperature dipped suddenly, then rose. Light cycles shortened and lengthened. Gravitational pulls tilted sideways for seconds at a time. In many species, such disruptions would halt reproductive function immediately. But the human volunteers had prepared not just physically, mentally. They synchronized breathing. They communicated with small gestures. Outside, Mara's team adjusted the microclimate gently, never overriding nature, only guiding stability. Lin Wei spoke quietly. Hormonal patterns are continuing. Cellular readiness markers are increasing. Mara nodded. Maintain balance. No overcorrection. Minutes passed. Then the first major data spike appeared. Confirmed, Lin Wei whispered. Full reproductive functionality sustained under interference conditions. The hall fell silent. Zitharan monitors projected the data above the chamber. Hormonal alignment, cellular viability, stable biological readiness. All functioning despite continuous environmental disruption. Princess Vela stared at the projections. This could be coincidence, she said slowly. Maintain disruption. Extend the test. The interference continued for another hour. The humans did not falter. Their bodies did what human bodies had evolved to do for thousands of years: adapt. Humans had survived ice ages, deserts, floods, famine, and shifting climates on their home planet. Their biology was not rigid. It was flexible. And that flexibility now stood on display for an alien world. As the test concluded, Lin Wei confirmed the final results. Cycle sustained. Viability confirmed. No long-term instability detected. Mara stepped forward. You asked for proof, she said calmly. This is proof. The pod opened. The volunteers stepped out, exhausted but steady. Applause did not erupt. Zitharans were not emotional in that way, but a ripple of energy moved through the chamber. Respect, surprise, recalculation. Vela approached the humans directly. You have demonstrated biological capability under extreme variability, she said. But reproduction is more than chemistry. It is survival of offspring. Can your species ensure continuation beyond the initial cycle? Mara expected this question. We anticipated that, she replied. Behind her, screens illuminated with projections, simulations based on long-term adaptation modeling. Human embryos developing under variable gravity. Nutrient adjustments compensating for atmospheric differences. Social structures designed to support stability. We do not rely only on biology, Mara continued. We rely on intelligence, on planning, on cooperation. Humans raise their young in deserts, in frozen lands, in cities of steel. We do not wait for perfect conditions. We build them. Vela studied the data carefully. Zitharan scientists cross-checked the models in real time. After several tense minutes, one of them spoke. The projections are accurate. Their species can sustain continuation even under unstable cycles. A murmur passed through the hall again. Vela was silent for a long time. Finally, she turned to the gathered assembly. For centuries, Zithra has believed stability is strength, predictability is perfection. We believed species that fluctuate are weak. Her silver eyes returned to the humans. We were wrong. The word echoed louder than any applause. Humans do not require constant conditions, Vela continued. They adapt to change. They cooperate under stress. Their biology is flexible. Their minds are inventive. Their survival strategy is not control, it is resilience. She faced Mara directly. You have proven your claim. Humans can reproduce beyond seasonal restriction. They can sustain life under environmental unpredictability. Zithra acknowledges this. For a moment the humans simply stood there absorbing the weight of what had happened. Kieran exhaled slowly. Did we just win? Mara allowed herself a rare smile. We didn't win, we proved. Vela stepped closer still, lowering her voice. You have shifted our understanding. Zithra has much to learn from your species. There was no mockery in her tone now, only respect. As the chamber slowly emptied, Zithran scientists approached the human team not as critics but as colleagues. Questions were asked. Data was exchanged. Barriers began to dissolve. Later that evening, under the light of the 3 moons, Mara stood once again on the palace balcony. But this time she was not alone. Princess Vela joined her. Your species is strange, Vela said quietly. Mara laughed softly. We've heard that before. You are emotional, chaotic, unpredictable, Vela paused. And yet you are strong. Not strong in the way you measure, Mara replied. We survive because we adjust, because we work together, because we refuse to stop when things get hard. Vela looked at the moons. Zithra has always valued control, but control can break when conditions change. Your species bends instead of breaking. Mara nodded. That's humanity. For a long moment they stood in silence. Finally, Vela spoke again. This challenge began as mockery. I believed humans were limited. Today I admit my mistake. Zithra welcomes future cooperation. Mara extended her hand. Vela hesitated briefly, then clasped it. 2 very different species, connected not by perfection but by understanding. Below them, the human volunteers celebrated quietly among themselves. They were exhausted. Some leaned against the crystal walls, others sat on the smooth steps of the courtyard. But their faces carried pride. They had not conquered Zithra. They had earned its respect. And that was far more powerful. As the starship Resolute prepared for departure the next morning, Zithran officials gathered to witness it. No challenge, no mockery, only acknowledgement. Princess Vela stood at the forefront. Humanity has proven adaptable beyond expectation, she announced. Let this day mark the beginning of mutual advancement. The ship lifted into the sky, engines glowing softly. Inside, Mara looked out the window at the shrinking palace. Kieran sat beside her. So, he said, what do we tell Earth? Mara smiled. We tell them the truth, that we were underestimated, that we adapted, and that the galaxy is starting to understand what humans really are. The stars stretched ahead of them. Behind, Zithra watched with new respect. Humans were not perfect. They were not stable in the way other species preferred. They were not controlled by rigid cycles, but they were resilient. And in a universe full of changing worlds and shifting conditions, resilience was the greatest strength of all. Humanity had not just proven it could reproduce year-round. It had proven it could thrive anywhere. And that was something no alien would ever doubt again.